Hi guys, it's been 1 week of horrible and unjustified Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and we can say one thing for sure, his blitzkrieg failed miserably. Two major cities, Kiev and Kharkiv, which were the primary goals of the invaders, are still under full control, despite the prediction of US intelligence that Kiev will fall within 48 hours. All the major cities are under Ukrainian control still. Now from hindsight, we can clearly reconstruct Putin's original plan and understand the reason why it failed. Putin wanted to intimidate Ukraine, make a sudden attack and force it to capitulate within 48 hours. The war started from Putin's announcement that it's not a war but a special operation for demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. The Ukrainian army must surrender immediately and it will be fully forgiven. Citizens are not to be attacked. Right after the announcement, huge amount of missiles were fired to destroy Ukrainian military infrastructure. Then Putin gave another statement that everything is destroyed, including all the military planes and anti-missile system, surrender now. Luckily, Ukrainian army was not dumb and neither all the anti-missile system nor all the planes were destroyed. Putin's assumption was that the weak Ukrainian army capitulated in front of 150,000 Russian troops. He thought it's gonna be like Afghanistan with Ghani, where the president flew out from the country in the helicopter fully loaded with cash. But the Ukrainian president decided to fight like hell and tell everyone that Ukraine will never surrender and will fight till the end. One of the reasons of that is that Russian army is outdated and has very little advantages over the Ukrainian one. Surely they have missiles which can destroy military objects and infrastructure, but the rest of the Russian army are Soviet-style tanks and land troops with filled rations expired back in 2015. Surely perhaps the Russian army is 10 times larger than the Ukrainian ones. But the Ukrainian army was trained by NATO for a very long time. They have Turkish Bayraktar drones, which were decisive in the Karabakh War in 2020, where the Armenian side was supported by Russia, lost badly. Ukraine has an enormous amount of Javelin, fire and forget units from the United States, which destroy Russian tanks with a little effort. And of course the motivation is the key factor, which the Ukrainian army has and the Russian army lacks. One of the biggest problems of the Russian army is tactics. They don't know what to do and why they are in Ukraine. Most of them are 18 years old and basically a cannon fodder. They were not even aware that it's no longer part of military training. They only act when their military command says so. The Ukrainian soldiers don't wait for any orders from above. If they see a tank, they destroy it. So-called distributed decision-making. It is confirmed that the Russian army has no phones and no GPS. They have to use paper maps to navigate. Many of these tanks are getting lost and run out of gas. Ukrainians are taking off-road signs to confuse them even more, and it works. Here is an amazing video of local Ukrainian guy driving and asking Russian tank man who ran out of gas. I put the subtitles.
Сломались, пацаны. Сломались. Можно оттащить на Россию обратно. А вы хоть знаете, куда вы едете?
Нет.
Куда?
Нет.
На Киев, блядь, хуярите. Да.
А что по новостям говорят?
Ну, у вас пока все на нашей стороне. Ваши и плен сдаются хорошо. Потому что тоже пацаны не знают, куда ехать, блядь. И я вот всю колонну пообспрашивал таких, как вы, никто не в курсе вообще, кто куда едет.
Basically, the Russian army is in a complete disarray. Some of these soldiers just run away when they are run out of gas, leaving tanks behind, and the local villagers are pulling these tanks out with their tractors. Isn't it amazing? Big scary Russia? There are a bunch of videos online where some of the Russian tank men are being captured by locals and taken to the police. In some smaller towns in the east, people are coming on the street to prevent tanks from entering. This is a very desperate attempt, but soldiers are not allowed to kill the civilians, at least openly, so it works to drain the gas. So why did Putin miscalculate it so much, and why did he start the invasion now, not 8 years ago? The best explanation is the following. In 2014, the last Russian president of Ukraine was deposed and Crimea was annexed by Russia. Then Putin wanted to capture the whole south and east of Ukraine and declare a new Russia puppet state. He wanted to do this not with the regular forces but with the paramilitary units of Russian criminals, pretending that they are local farmers and miners fighting for their right and motherlands, obviously providing them with Russian weapons and money. Putin's plan didn't work that well, because these units were in disarray and they were too corrupt as everything in Russia. So the only land they managed to capture was DNR and LNR, despite the Ukrainian army back in 2014 was in a really miserable state. Politically speaking, these allowed Ukraine to take a decisive turn towards the west because lost territories were mostly pro-Russian. Putin knew that there are more people in Ukraine who supported Russia and he wanted to regain political power there. The most important figure in that process was a Ukrainian oligarch, Viktor Medvedchuk, whose nickname is the best buddy of Putin. This guy owned a couple of major Ukrainian TV channels and he was one of the principal negotiators of the Minsk Protocol ceasefire. Apparently, Medvedchuk promised Putin that he would be able to regain Russian influence in Ukraine through his own media resources. Putin believed in that. Russian media propaganda worked so well in Russia, it can work well in Ukraine. And the truth is that Russia managed to regain some political power in Georgia after the war in 2008, so it's not fully impossible. As a proof of that, you can see that currently Georgia does not impose any sanctions against Russia, despite regular people there strongly supporting Ukraine. So, from 2014 to 2019, under Ukrainian President Poroshenko, these channels were allowed to broadcast, but they were heavily criticized for the pro-Russian position. But Medvedchuk still was assuring and lying to Putin that political victory is still an option and we just need to wait for it just a little bit more. When Zelensky became president in 2019, he decided to ban these channels completely by imposing sanctions against them in February 2021. This was technically illegal from the Ukrainian law because you can't impose sanction on Ukrainian made and operating business, and Zelensky actually got a bunch of criticism for being a dictator. Apparently, that action made Putin understand that there is no political way he could gain power in Ukraine. It seems like Putin's advisors told him that pro-Russian sentiments are still strong in Ukraine, and the current president is quite unpopular and people will be happy to depose him. Putin expected a Crimea effect, when all the locals came out from their houses to meet Russian tanks saying thank you. The plan was that the Ukrainian army capitulate on day one, Zelensky is deposed, and later Russia can organize some fake election where a pro-Putin candidate wins. In this case, civilian casualties would have been minimal, sanctions still limited, and newly elected Ukrainian president could have asked to cancel them later. Genius plan, but it failed so badly. The main reason is that Putin lost his contact with the real world. If you don't know, the last 2 years Putin spent in the bunker because he was afraid of COVID. Everyone who wants to meet him must spend 2 weeks in isolation. That's why you had such a long table when he talked to Macron. And Putin doesn't know how to use internet, nor does he have any smartphone. All the information he gets is coming from his advisors printed on paper. And the advisors wanted to present things way better than they actually are. The thing is that Ukraine has changed a lot within the last 8 years. There was a long-time axiom that modern Ukraine was made out of different leftovers of various states like Russian and Austro-Hungarian Empire, Poland, Czechoslovakia and Romania, with very different cultures and languages, and you don't have any successful nation-state in Eastern Europe like that. The Ukrainian-speaking West wants to go to Europe, and Russian-speaking East miss Mother Russia. And it was like that back in 2014, but after 8 years of observing how Donbas changed from one of the richest part of Ukraine to the poorest region with the real terror imposed by the local warlords, Russian-speaking Ukrainians don't want to live with Putin, and they're fighting like hell. You can look for countless examples on that Telegram channel. All these heroic acts against invaders were made overwhelmingly by Russian speakers. Basically, Russian-speaker Ukrainians prefer democracy, freedom of speech, and various Ukrainian institutions, which are still far away from the Western standards, but it's incomparably better to totalitarian Putinism. The Ukrainian state affiliation is no longer based on language and culture, but on civil rights and liberties. It's quite an astonishing development in Eastern Europe, where all countries are monolinguistic. I'm a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. Despite not living in Ukraine for a very long time, I would fight as hell if I was there. Before the war, I would never even thought to fight for any countries as a true citizen of the world. All Russian and Ukrainian speakers in Ukraine consider Putin as a cruel invader who destroys everything they managed to build for the last 30 years. That was Putin's biggest miscalculation. Next big thing was sanctions. On the day one, it was really embarrassing. all these leftist politicians didn't know what to do and refused to give any commentaries. Biden announced that Russia now is banned from space collaboration with the United States and a couple of more banks to be sanctioned. Germany refused to block SWIFT because of communist Olaf Scholz is basically a Russian asset. Really embarrassing. Only Boris Johnson was really mad and vocal about the situation and imposed as many sanctions as he could in one day, saying that his goal is to destroy Russian economy. Another unexpected guy was Erdogan, who is cruel dictator by himself and is openly restoring the Ottoman Empire way more successfully than Putin's Soviet Union, and even for him it was too much to attack sleepy cities at 4 a.m. without any notification and any reason. It looks like the West didn't think that it would be a real invasion and assumed that Putin would only take Donbas, or maybe the West is too left and didn't care too much. If Ukraine capitulated on day one, sanctions would not have any effects on Putin. Luckily, President Zelensky is a comedian and great actor surrounded by a great PR team. His heroic stay in Kiev, refusal to be evacuated to US, constant updates on the situation and really meaningful and touchy speeches, a very professional media campaign to prove that Putin is killing civilians from day one, all these things made the civilized world population to push their governments to give Ukraine a much greater support. Day by day, they managed to impose unthinkable sanctions and made Russian economy stop. This time, even Switzerland, which had been neutral since 19th century, joined. Azerbaijan, which was both Russian and Turkey ally, completely abandoned Russia and joined Erdogan. A significant proportion of gas stations in Ukraine is Sokar, which is a government-owned Azerbaijan company. They agreed to provide Ukrainian cities services with free gas. Russia completely lost another former Soviet republic. Even former Iranian President Ahmadinejad strongly supports Ukraine. Isn't it crazy? The Russian government had to impose extreme financial limitation to prevent a complete collapse. Regular Russian people can't withdraw anything from their dollars or euro accounts in cash, nor they can send any money abroad. The currency is falling rapidly and central bank is trying to stop it at all cost. And from today, all currency conversion operations are taxed by 30%. Probably tomorrow there will be a material law and males won't be able to leave the country anymore. All planes to Europe are banned, which made all international Russian travel collapsed. All the international companies from H&M and Volkswagen to Pornhub and OnlyFans left the country. Gazprom lost 80% of the value, Sberbank 90%. But the most important things are obviously NATO weapons. Starting from day 3, it was clear that the Russian play A was lost and Ukraine could fight for a long time. An enormous amount of weapons have been transferred to Ukraine. Germany finally agreed to send Stingers instead of helmets, which is a game changer. You can shoot planes from the ground with relative ease. Longtime neutral countries like Sweden and Finland are sending stuff now. Finally, lots of warplanes and anti-missile systems are being supplied. It is highly likely, if things go well, Ukrainian sky can be protected not by NATO but NATO equipment. Ukraine has the chance to enter the European Union with fast-track procedures within a month. That sounds crazy. Ireland already cancelled the visa for Ukrainians, which was actually the hardest visa I've ever got. And Canada is on its way with cancellation. On the Russian side, the situation is much different. The only thing that can be done is to fight the information war. They are trying to ban the word war. According to Putin, it must be only called a special operation. You are not allowed to say that civilians are dying, and if they are, it's evil Nazi Ukrainian killing their own citizens. The official position was that there were no casualties among the Russian army before day 7. Now they admitted like 400. Ukrainian side claims 9,000. The Ukrainian number is probably closer to reality. Also in the Russian news, they are trying to pretend that the war is happening on Donbas, not the whole Ukraine. This is miserable bullshit. Russian citizens are not stupid en masse, and they are trying to protest against this madness. The police are trying to arrest each and everyone, even young children. Yesterday the government banned 2 major opposition channels, Echo of Moscow and TV Rain, and many small opposition newspapers are coming. Now they are trying to pass a law giving 15 years in prison for misinformation about the war. But the information war is lost everywhere. People know how to use VPN. They have relatives in Ukraine who they can call and ask. The Ukrainian side made a great campaign asking captured soldiers to call their relatives who have no idea that their sons or husbands are in war in Ukraine and ask them to do something to free them. This caused a bunch of local outrage among regular people, especially those who still watch Russian TV. Finally, what is next? Belarus might actually join the war. Now they only allow Russian missiles to be sent from their territory and help the wounded Russian soldiers, but Belarusian troops can actually cross the border. The problem is that these soldiers are even worse trained than the Russian ones and have completely zero motivation and know a lot more about the war because they have phones. And Tricky Lukashenko feels that Putin might lose this time and he doesn't want to fight for nothing. What also can happen is that Russian forces started to kill civilians for real. Now they do this from time to time. You can check the video from Kharkiv or Sartana where the Grad system was used in residential areas. This is basically 100 missiles falling within a square simultaneously killing everything. Luckily, cities are not being bombarded for complete destruction as it was in Hitler's time. This unfortunately can change because Putin may decide to destroy everything as a revenge. Within the last couple of days, several non-military governments buildings were bombed in Kharkiv and Kiev, where a bunch of civilians were basically burned alive. That scenario unleashed would be extremely painful and unfortunately it's quite likely. Another option is revolution in Russia. It is undeniably clear that all the Russian business was not aware of that madness war before it has started, and all the businessmen want to finish it as soon as possible. Putin is currently sitting in bunkers somewhere in Yekaterinburg, far away from Moscow. Probably he is afraid of his physical destruction. And there are a bunch of people who are ready to take power in Russia. They just need an army to join. And I believe it's a very likely outcome. The worst scenario is the World War III and nuclear destruction. But I don't think that people around Putin are crazy enough or really believe in what he's doing. But I really don't know. Putin was openly threatening nukes, but it looks like it was done to stop NATO sending the weapons to Ukraine. But it clearly didn't work. Finally, China has a key to stop the madness. I assume that Putin had a deal with Xi to take Taiwan later, but Xi might betray Putin seeing that he's losing everything. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Slava Ukraini! Bye!